Good evening, everybody. Welcome to True Crime with the Sarge. I'm your host, Joseph Jackalone. For those watching now live, thank you very much. And if you're watching this on the replay, thank you very much too. Wow, we already jumped to already 86 people. That's fantastic. So I want to welcome you to the show tonight. With us is a guest that has been here before, John Ray, Shannan Gilbert Family Attorney. He's been here a couple of times to help us out and kind of make sense of what's going on. And if you've been following this case, we know we got another punch in the gut this week. So we're going to get into it with John. But welcome, John, to the show. Thank you for coming back on.
Thank you for having me, Joe. Good to see you.
Thank you. So yeah, we're got a kind of a gut punch this week, right? So we had talked last time that the commissioner was probably either going to be replaced with a new executive, or he was going to leave on his own accord, like he said. But I didn't anticipate him just dropping his papers last week and saying, "That's it, I'm done. I'll be out now."
Well, I did. But I had been chatting with Rodney, so I knew what was coming and when. So it came as no surprise at all. And he's done it properly. He's keeping himself in place theoretically until sometime in December, but maybe in reality until a person steps up in his place. But regardless, we all knew or should have known that he would be going because the administrations, whether the Democrats or the Republicans prevail, the administrations would change. And he was appointed by Bellone. Bellone will be gone. So it makes sense that he tendered his resignation when he did.
Yeah, he kind of puts himself out on top too, right? So he's kind of setting his own, legacy up, so to speak, saying that I'm going to leave on my own terms. And he's doing what's good for him, and I think that's a great idea. But where do you think this kind of leaves us in the case?
Well, I just say that I don't think Rodney's just doing what's good for him. I think he's following a very good tradition in tendering his resignation with new administration, and so I don't know if that's really good for him or not, but I do know that that's the right way to go, and he did it. And then I also think for himself, he has a lot of options waiting for him, and not least of which is going to another venue, which I won't say more about right now. And he also wants to spend time with his beautiful family. He's got a great kid who's an All-American at Wake Forest playing basketball, and I think in her senior year, and he wants to be there to see her. So he has a very good traditional family approach that I like. So I say that. But as far as where does it leave us with the police, I guess that's the question you're asking me. Yeah.
Yeah. How do you think it goes?
Well, it's hard to know exactly how it goes, of course, but what I don't think we can do anything about, but what I worry about is that whoever comes in, there'll be a natural tendency for the bureaucracy, and the police department is, after all, a bureaucracy.
Yep.
There's a tendency in government bureaucracy for the government at all costs to maintain its status quo, to maintain things as they are. And, Rodney was in his own right, he was an innovative revolutionary coming in and delivering a shock to the bureaucracy and saying, "Wake up! This is the way we're going to do it from now on." Those kinds of developments in government, they just get subsumed eventually by the government, and the government just proceeds in its old way. So that's a real tendency here. I'm a little worried about that. That it's not that they'll go back to the good old days. They'll just go back to the way it always was, period. And that can't help us if that happens.
No. Yeah, when all else fails, revert back to the mean, right? I mean, that's basically what you're dealing with in that respect. And we know that the commissioner has put out some pretty progressive moves and ideas, and some of them were not liked, specifically by the district attorney. So we could see that there might be a little tension amongst all of that stuff. And yeah, Sheila, status quo is not good. Yeah, we both agree on that part. Even for yourself now, you had finally gotten into a place where the police department was listening to you and, taking some it was advice or suggestions, however you would like to describe that. But where do you see that going now? Do you think that maybe the new person will be open to this still and keeping you as part of an integral part of this case?
Well, I guess first you need to recognize that the inertia of government is powerful. It's overwhelming, really, and so there's a tendency to focus, therefore, or for the government to focus, therefore, upon the narrow as opposed to the broad, and say, well, we have these murders, we're going to investigate these murders, but anything else is collateral for right now. We're not going to bother with it. And all the other things that are surrounding and the circumstances surrounding the murders, they tend to get chopped away, ignored, disregarded, and so forth with time. That's a real potentiality here. If that were to happen, much of the work that I've done and have provided would fall into that category. There are things that I've been able to garner, to capture, and bring forward, which are very germane to the narrow issues, to the issue of murder right now, and not to the broader circumstances of the atmosphere in which the murders occurred. But I brought forth also the evidences that start to create maybe you might say the weave and the wove of woof and weave of the garment that consists of all of the circumstances in which these murders take place. And I don't want those things to be ignored. We've done a lot of work on getting those things and putting them together. And as we speak, far more of that sort of evidence is pouring into my office nonstop. And right now, anyway. And all of that information is useful, and some of it germane. None of it should be ignored. I only hope that those who are there now and have gotten the drift of Rodney Harrison's thinking will keep going and follow his thinking and say, look, we reach broadly. We're going to go and get evidence wherever it can come from. We're not resistant to that. We're not going to insist upon strict bureaucracy, because it's too limiting, especially in a case that's not been solved after all of these years. We're going to change. We're going to do things that we've never done or we're not inclined to do because we're in an unusual situation where we haven't solved this case until just now partially. And there's so much more to solve. And so I just hope that they don't do that. But listen, if they do, they do. I will continue to gather the information that comes in. I will continue to work on the case as I've been asked to do by the victims' families that I'm working for. And I will not give up, and I will not stop gathering all of these pieces that are coming into me. Why would I?
Well, that's good news to hear. No, I didn't think you would, because you've been keeping this thing going for the last better part of 13 years, and I didn't think you were going to let it go now. So this question here is pretty much like kind of what you were summing up, that will this affect the case against Sherman? I don't think so, right? I mean, he's already been arrested for the 3. I think the 4th one now comes almost immediately. But we're talking about the other cases. We're talking about the Karen Vagatas and the Shannan Gilberts and Valerie Mack and Jessica Taylor and Asian male and that's
more than that. And more than that, what's unfolding that, as I say, that's coming to my office. What's unfolding is that this monster operated on a scale that's stunning. Nobody really knows yet how far his reach went. And not all of his crimes are murders, but there are other kinds of crimes of intimidation and abuse, as well as all kinds of economic crimes he's committed, as well as frauds that he's been involved in. This guy's reach is stunning, actually. When you see what I've seen about him, he's far more what's the right word, heinous than even you could imagine, knowing of the three charges he has right now. Far more. He reaches into Philadelphia. He reaches into New York City. He reaches into other states. And I don't mean just because he has property there or because he's present there, he's been there, but because he's acted there. According to the records that I have, he has acted in these places and he has committed crimes in these places. And I have the evidence of a lot of that, which came into this office as Rodney was preparing to go and as he resigned, and it keeps coming right now. So I'm going to keep giving that to the police department. But Rex is a far more challenging being than anybody could have imagined. And he is evil in a way that no one imagines.
I mean, if you remember when he was first arrested, the commissioner called him a demon, right? And he kind of got a lot of pushback on that, calling him a demon. And when he was asked about that in I think it was a Newsday interview, they said, would you look to maybe soften that up a bit? And he said, no. So, yeah. So, I mean, there is something definitely bubbling up below the surface there that we're unaware of. And like I said, this case has been pretty much kept under wraps until this whole thing came out in July anyway. So I wouldn't be a bit surprised, but I tend to agree with you, John, that this is far more reaching, even with all those burner phones. I mean, one was called Springfield, right? Like from Missouri. We know about Las Vegas is finally getting the DNA that they wanted to try to test it against cases. So it's going to be interesting to see exactly how far and fast this thing goes, because there's still time. So if you're getting information, there's still time to get this in with the commissioner.
Yeah, I mean, first, I not all the information is of equal value, and a lot of it is irrelevant, and I just, choose not to pursue it. But so much of it really is relevant. And you mentioned like Springfield. You said I think you thought it was from Massachusetts, Missouri. Sorry, but actually, he also had Springfield rifles, and he also, his buddy who was having this switching partners business was from Springfield Gardens. So I don't know where the Springfield is. Is it a double or triple entendre or something else? I don't know. But these are the kinds of things that are out there to be followed and to be known, because he's that bad. He stalks people. He stalks people everywhere. He stalked people he didn't kill, but he stalked them to intimidate them and bring fear to them, and really did do so. And he did so in a way that where his behavior was retaliatory for what you would consider minor things. But this guy couldn't help himself. That's how, and his characteristic in all of the instances I'm talking about was rage, fury, ferociousness. He wasn't, a killer who sat and just thought and then suddenly did something crazy like, you would expect. He was completely ferocious in what he did and relentless. So the calls to Melissa Barthelemy's sister that he made on Melissa's phone were just one part of the kinds of things he was doing everywhere. As if it was as if he thought, oh, gee, I'm a giant. I can do whatever I want. And I will take revenge when I want, where I want, for anything that's done to me. That's the kind of guy you're dealing with. We have evidence of his criminal activity in New York City and Philadelphia, Long Island, of course, and other places. Quite a story.
Yeah, no, I mean, when you think about it, I'm looking at that gap too, right? From when the time this case finally broke until when he was arrested, there's a 10-year gap or so between when the last body was found and when he was arrested. And that's the kind of thing that really concerns me on so many different levels.
Yeah, that makes sense what you're saying. And it does so in his case, because it also appears that he believed, and probably rightly so, that he could act with impunity in all of these instances of crimes that he committed, that he could get away with them without having to worry about being chased down. And for some reason, he believes that, to the point of reckless, incredibly reckless behaviors that you would think ordinarily would have pinned him right down. But he would do them, and miraculously, he wouldn't be traced or caught. He left trails of evidence. He didn't just kill and then very cleverly cover it up. He left trails of evidence in case after case. But for reasons, they seem like they're supernatural. They're just incredible that anybody could have gotten away with it as long as he did, and as far as he did.
Right. I mean, just one thing after another, too, when you're looking at all these other pieces of the puzzle that are, if you're just joining us now, we're up to 275 people watching us live now, which is fantastic. We have John Ray on, Shannan Gilbert Family Attorney, and we're just going through some of the latest developments that happened in the Gilgo case, and specifically with the Commissioner of Suffolk County, Rodney Harrison. So, John, when you're trying to put all this stuff together, now you said before that you have a lot more information coming in. Is this regarding? Could you tell us? I don't know if you could tell us, but is it regarding Shannan? Is it regarding Karen Bagata? Is it regarding any of the other girls, or how is that information stacking up?
It's stacking up regarding new people you're not aware of, and I've shared those things with the commissioner. I don't know what has happened with them. This is all very recent, so it could be just in the stage of developing. But there are other victims, and very real. Not all of them dead either, but people who have been profoundly affected by Rex Hoyman and his behavior, who've spoken to me and given me statements. So, that's as far as I can take it. There's evidence, collateral evidence regarding Hoyman's connection with, for example, Peter Hackett. We need to pursue that more, but I'm not a police department.
Right.
I can only go as far as my time and space and what's the right experience and intellect take me. And it's not as far as the collective experience and intellect of the police department. So I think it falls on them to really follow up on some of these things, these leads which exist. But I'm also, more than reasonably convinced that this guy who would stalk people relentlessly, he hunted them, that he had to be very likely behind some of the stalking and intimidation that took place as against me and my family. And I'm waiting to see whether or not the police will look at that information which we've given them. But that's just a side note. Doesn't stop me from working and going ahead. But there's also a question of whether or not there are other individuals connected to him who are still at large and are involved in some of his criminal activities. I think that's real. He didn't act alone in every instance. It's another question whether he acted alone in committing the murders. But I mean, there's other hairs of his wife in the tapes that were wrapped around the victims. That should tell you something. And there's other evidence like that exists. So I think there's much more work to be done, man.
You have a lot of support here. They love you, John. Smart man. You have all throughout the comments. People are, you're relentless. Perfect description. Yeah, no, I mean it's good that you have gotten all of this because it actually, even with the new commissioner, you've actually, I think, gotten to a point where you can't be ignored. Right. So, I mean, you were invited in. Yeah. I mean, if they shut you out, see, these are all bad political moves for the next person down the road, especially if the case stalls in regards to the other victims in this case.
I suppose, the thing for the task force to avoid is to just concentrate its efforts on the murders that we know about that he did, but to expand very, very far beyond that into all of the other uh, circumstances that we are beginning to know about. That's my whole point. That that will lead you to that will lead them to other things, to other crimes, as I said. Of that, I have no doubt whatsoever. The evidence I have is extremely strong in that regard.
And have you done the affidavits with these individuals too in regards to that, or you haven't gotten to that stage yet?
I have done that, and I do have affidavits, and there are those who I have not yet taken affidavits from, but who are willing to give them. I have to, if you have to understand the work that this takes, it's overwhelming actually, and I have had to travel to other states to take these affidavits, and do the thing, sit and meet with these people, talk to them, qualify to see whether or not they're just puffing it up, or whether they really know, or whether they had somebody who looked like Rex Heuermann who bothered them, but it was somebody else. You have to go through all of that. You have to do that kind of work to make it worth pursuing. And then you have to take their affidavits. You have to go prepare them based on what you've learned from them, go over them with them. Corrections have to be made, have to go back and see them, and as I said, they're spread out in other places. So it takes an enormous amount of time to do this. And I'm just committed to doing it. And so I'm going to finish what I started.
That's good to hear, right? So we need you to keep on advocating for those that can no longer advocate for themselves, including family members and everything else that who are no longer with us, right? Specifically Shannan Gilbert, her mom, and a lot of other people that have since passed away. The issue that really I get down to this is we don't know for sure regards to who the next police commissioner is. But they have some very big shoes to fill in this case. And I think a lot of people are going to be watching.
Yeah. Well, I hope so. Who knows? It'll be what it'll be. That part I can't worry about because I have no control over that,
right.
And nor should I. So I'm not trying to influence it in any way.
No, I understand that, but I'm just saying in respect that the next person who comes in, whoever he or she is, they have to pick this ball up in this case and bring it over the goal line. It's not there yet. I mean, yeah, we have one person involved with 3, soon to be 4, probably homicides. But there is a lot more work that needs to get done on these cases, including the DNA results getting back from a couple of the unknown or unidentified victims.
Yeah, there's a lot more evidence, I think, is your point, and that they have to, for this task force, even though the size of it has expanded, there may come a moment when somebody realizes that the work to be done to follow all of these leads to where they take you in society and in geography might be larger than the number of people devoted to that type of investigation in the task force, in which event more people will be needed, or another agency needs to come in, such as the FBI, playing a more active role in doing the footwork, so to speak. I don't know. I mean, I'm not, I don't stand above them and look down and say, aha, I know what they should do and shouldn't do. I'm not a law enforcement aficionado. So I don't know.
But yeah, no, it's just in regards to where this case goes. I'm just throwing that out there that this individual has got to pick this ball up right where Rodney Harrison left it off and carry it over the goal line, because I do think there's going to be a lot of eyes on this individual and what their first moves are. Because if there's anything about reverting back to the mean, I think there's going to be some major political pushback. And I think even for the election on Tuesday, I think someone should ask the candidates that question. How are you going to handle this case moving forward? If I was able to ask the question, that's what I would ask.
Yeah, I suppose you're right. Yep.
Well, like I said, you just hope that a reporter or a journalist that's doing this gets the chance to ask that question. Where is this case headed? We only have a few days left before the election. But I don't think I've heard anybody bring it up.
Yeah, well, given the fact, and I say it's a fact, that Hoyman's behavior, outrageous, ferocious behavior, spread geographically into the places I've mentioned and other places as well over the course of time, right up until he was arrested. There have to be a quantity of people who know Rex Hoyman, have encountered him, who know about him, who know about some of the cases that I now have, the new cases that I have learned about, that they also know about. People who were sex workers, former sex workers, people who were in the industry, drivers, people who just casually knew him, in other circumstances, people who knew him through some of the perverse, filthy, sexual messes that he survived in, that he throve in. For example, these swapping clubs, like the one in New York, La Trapeze, that he went to. There were also, we've come to learn, there were swapping clubs right here on Long Island, and that they actually registered. They actually had a club, and you could register, join as a club, and they openly advertised who they were, and their organizer is someone who was attached to Oak Beach. So these are things. I mean, just to give you a taste of what I know, these are things that have emerged, and they were everywhere with this kind of nonsense. And I had one reporter questioned me, saying what you hear a lot of people actually saying, but they maybe not so openly. They say, well, it's about sex. I mean, after all, people can do what they want. It's private. They're allowed to do what they want. And this club I'm talking about on Long Island was busted. And when they were busted, nobody got arrested because it was consensual. So there was no problem with it. And I think the only thing they got were fire violations. But in any event, excuse me, but there are real consequences for that kind of behavior, and not least of which is the rapid spreading of STDs. What about when the couple who pledge their troth to one another end up switching with other people, betraying each other in kind, or sometimes one-sided betrayals, where the man would go and hire a sex worker to be his partner so his wife didn't know about it. There are no consequences for that? No consequences for his family, for his children? Of course there are. Maybe they're not, criminal penal law consequences. Maybe they are, but they're just not enforced anymore. But you can't deny that there are consequences. Rex Hoyman is a cause as well as a consequence of that behavior. And, there's no better example of that than look what's happened to, I bring it up now because we have some connection to this in the facts we found, the connection of his kind of behavior with the misbehavior as to children. Remember, he was very much into sexual child abuse. He watched the horrible child abuse sex films where the children were tortured as well. There's no better example of the consequences of what I'm talking about than the perversion and corruption of a big chunk of the Roman Catholic hierarchy in Rockville Center, which is bankrupt now precisely because of their misbehavior and the lawsuits that came about as a result. And one of those individuals is directly connected to Oak Beach. So, and to Shannan Gilbert. So there are real consequences for all this kind of, it's not just, it's sex, you could do whatever you want. You may be able to, but look what you've created. There's a monster amongst you. Several monsters.
As I say, he might not be the only one that's, that comes out of that kind of atmosphere too, that's for sure.
Yeah. I mean, you take Shannon's situation, right, and take Heuermann's situation. Heuermann, living directly next door to Joe Brewer, the next house over was Monsignor Alan Plaka, Monsignor of the Roman Catholic Church, who had been repeatedly accused of sexually abusing young people, and who was eventually retired, pushed out of the Catholic Church's active hierarchy. His house was right next door to Joe Brewer's. It was the next house over. And you might say, well, so what? Is that just another of the many coincidences in this case? Possibly. But we found a document which Plaka himself filed and paid money for, had an agent representing him to reduce his property taxes on his house in Oak Beach. And the application went to the reassessment board, or whatever it's called, that deals with reducing your taxes, if your real estate taxes, if your house is over assessed. And this man, a Monsignor of the Roman Catholic Church, who was in charge of the creation of the insurance company Fidelis, which, as you know now, is a multi-billionaire major insurance company in America. He was one of the founders of it. He had great skill in that regard. This same individual, representing the church, puts an application in and uses the death of Shannan Gilbert to his advantage, when he knows that the family of Shannan Gilbert is suffering miserably because of her death. And he uses her death to get himself a huge 61% reduction in his real estate taxes. Do you know how he did it? He put in an application in which he filled it out and said that the reason for the overvaluing of his property, that in other words, it should be reduced. The reason for the reduction that should come about in the value of his property is because his property was devalued because Shannan Gilbert knocked on his door when she ran from Joe Brewer's house. That was the raison d'etre that he gave for getting his real estate taxes reduced. That kind of intellectual greed and corruption pervaded one of the most powerful dioceses in the Catholic Church in America. And that guy did that, knowing full well what he was doing. Now, he mentions in his application that Shannan actually knocked on his door. He's the house right next door to Brewer. How does he know that Shannan knocked on his door? Was he there? And if he was, this Monsignor, he took no steps to rescue this little girl? And if he wasn't there, and he's just, making it up, how does he know that?
Yeah, I mean, this is the first time we're hearing all of this, for sure. I didn't even know about this individual in regards to Oak Beach. I'm sure there are never-ending stories that are coming out of this whole case, and you're getting bits and pieces of it.
I'll give you another one. The Heuermanns, apparently they're Catholics. And his aunt was a Mercy sister. She's still alive, retired in a nursing home, but she taught for years at Holy Trinity High School. She was a nun, Sister of Mercy. And the Sisters of Mercy were prevalent throughout Nassau County in the Catholic school system back in the day. So his aunt was in that circle, and Plaka himself was in if he's in the Oak Beach community, he would have gone to, he would have been connected with Our Lady of Lourdes, which is the parish for the Massapequa Park area. And the next door parish was our St. Rose of Lima in Massapequa proper, and that was occupied by Father, I forgot his first name, Father Charles Robordo. Charles Robordo was criminally accused of abusing children. He was also the principal of Holy Trinity High School, where the aunt worked, that I mentioned, where Hoyman's aunt worked. And so he was connected to Massapequa as well as to Holy Trinity. And I just wonder, what connection, we don't know yet, but is there a connection between Hoyman and these child abusers of the Catholic Church? Both of them involved in child abuse, both of them involved in sexual child abuse. Interesting problem. I've spoken to one of the lawyers who brought some of the lawsuits against the Catholic Church for this, and he agrees with my point of view. And understand, I'm not speaking because I'm an anti-Catholic. I'm a Roman Catholic myself, and I go to church. But you can see this problem was pervasive, and Hoyman seems to be some way connected to it.
Yeah, I mean, the story gets darker and darker as you keep on going down the rabbit hole here. I mean, it's just one thing after another with this guy. We know that Toulon, the sheriff, is got his own little task force interviewing all the sex workers that they can, going back from years on, and even now trying to develop some new information. He just did an interview not too long ago on that. Has anybody jumped in? Are there any other lawyers or any other people out there that have jumped in to try to help you put this thing together recently, at least since Rex has been arrested?
Not complete, not for the most part. No, a lot of people are encouraging. A lot of lawyers are encouraging me, but they're on the sidelines. One young fella came forward and offered his help in whatever way he could, and I very much thank him. And I've invited him in. Let's see if he comes. We've had some volunteers who are not lawyers who've come in to help on and off, and now we have some that are pretty good, and they're helping out. So I'm not completely alone, thank God, but mostly I am still. And we'll let's hope that gets better. We've decided to host I've decided to host what I call a symposium, which we're going to have December 8th. I've taken out of my pocket a lot of money to rent a theater over in Rockville Center at St. Francis College, where we're going to present the evidence that we have garnered in a broad way, in a complete way. And the public are invited to that. And hopefully some of these lawyers that, like this young fella, can help me out to organize that. It's going to be really undertaking a huge task to do that. But I think it's important to do it now. Now is a good time for it. So we've decided to go forward.
Yeah, definitely.
Maybe a little bit bigger than myself. Hopefully not. Hopefully we can control it and get it right. But we're doing it. So I'll let you know. I'll give when we put out the press release on it.
Okay.
All right.
Yep. And if you want to come back on and talk about that too, or just mention it, whatever, we'll try to get the word out to the whole group. We're up to 423 people already watching this live. This question comes up often about Joseph Ruiz and the prostitution ring that he was running with. Is there any other angles on that we've ever, because that kind of name kind of fell off the face of the earth. It gets brought up every now and then.
I don't know of anything new in that down that corridor that's come to me. I can't say, Joe. I don't. Okay. I don't have anything on that. I guess we should. That's another path that we should be looking.
Open up another avenue, right?
Down. I only work 24/7. I just can't do them all.
What do you mean you can't just stay up all night and do this? What are you talking about?
Well, I recently had to go into Manhattan. I had to go down to Philadelphia. I did. I had to go into Manhattan, travel around, find the sites where certain things allegedly occurred, go to the bureaucracies. And I've got a wonderful, by the way, I should have mentioned, and I didn't, and I shouldn't forget. I was a high school history teacher years ago before I was a lawyer when I was a kid. And one of my students went on, her name was Frances Nicotra. Frances went on and became a lawyer. And when I needed to get an estate form for Shannan Gilbert, with only a few days left to run before the statute of limitations ran out for me to bring the lawsuit I did, I turned to Frances Nicotra, who happened to practice in Jersey City, which is where Shannan had lived. So we were able to get the estate form through her good offices. And she's been by my side through this case ever since. She's one of the administratrices on Shannan's estate and Mary Gilbert's estate. And she's been extremely helpful. She went into Manhattan and did some of that legwork I'm talking about that I just mentioned. That's why I thought of it. So she really deserves, this kid is doing a great job. And, these are the kinds of things, they're resources that are there. People, I've known a lot of people over my lifetime. Hopefully I could pull some of them in to help.
Well, here's a great question from Say No to Globalism. Question is, will the symposium be online? Can they buy tickets to join online? How do you have any plans on doing that? Or you didn't think about that yet?
I'll think about it. I promise. We're planning on streaming it somehow. I don't know how those things work yet. We'll figure it out. We are planning on that. And, if you can't make it, you can't make it. But we're hoping a lot of people can.
Well, we know a couple of people that are probably going to make it, and then maybe can help out with that kind of thing too, right? Yeah. So we got Raul, and we got Jay, you got myself. So we'll figure out something. But this
it cost me $6,000 out of my pocket. So I'm probably going to have to find. I can't afford this anymore. I mean, I've spent over $50,000 out of my own pocket on this case, and you might wonder how. Well, transcripts cost a lot of money. I've taken over 21 depositions now, I believe. Wow. Those transcripts are expensive. There are other expenses. It's cost a fortune. So I'm a small practitioner. I can't afford it. So we might have to try to find a way to raise some money to pay that back. So I don't know.
Well, I mean, if you could figure out
all these things,
yeah, like I said, I'm still learning how to do this. So in that respect, but there's definitely a way. If there's a will, that I want to be on it, right? That kind of thing. But there's definitely going to. So are all the depositions, are they going to be public eventually? That kind of thing. If this thing moves forward. This is from Miss Gags. Asked this question. It's a good one.
The answer is eventually yes.
Okay, and can you give us an idea about how many more of these affidavits you've taken since the last time we spoke, roughly?
I've taken 2 more affidavits, and without affidavits, remember I had said there were originally 4 witnesses,
right?
2 of whom gave affidavits, 2 of whom gave oral statements. Adding to that now with the 2 other new affidavits, as well as I think 3 other witnesses who have come forward. And one of the interesting things about all of them is that there's a very common thread of characteristics of Hoyman's behavior in everything he does or did. So they tend, these people, to, without knowing each other and without having seen any of this on TV yet, or in the media, their statements tend to corroborate one another's, and they're in totally different places with totally different stories.
Yeah, no, like I said, when you start hearing this thing, so, and every time you come on, you've told us something new and something that we never knew about, and it's just kind of like, after a while, you just say to yourself, when are other even elected officials? I mean, we've heard 0 from Steve Ballone, except for the fact, of course, he wanted to take the victory lap when the arrest was made. But we've seen very little in regards to the political will behind to solve this case too.
Yeah, and well, it's not my purview to criticize the politicians. Politicians manage to criticize themselves if you pay attention. So I leave that to them and to their fooleries. But on what I'm doing, a good example of what I mean about tracing other trails and going down them, which we only have so much time to do, is the one that follows, for example, Hoyerman's wife. What's her involvement in? Here's an interesting little fact. I just have it right here. I guess you can't see it in the light, but we just came up with this. Just came in. Some of you may know it already because it's been a matter of public record. But Hoyerman managed to transfer his property, the First Avenue home in Massapequa Park. He transferred it to his wife, Osa, completely, 100% transferred to her alone. And he did it on, he did it on September 22nd of this year. He signed a bargain and sale deed and gave her all of his property. I would imagine that had something to do with his divorce, but very early on in the divorce, he did that. You say, well, okay, he's trying to shelter his property when he goes to jail and giving it all to his wife. But it's also, very pragmatic, even cynical on both of their parts, that would happen under these circumstances when there is a federal tax lien up over $200,000, and there's a state tax lien over $80,000 on that property, as well as that there are people who are creditors or potential creditors of Rex Hoyerman, not least of whom would be the victims. If any one of those victims decides to sue Hoyerman for what he did, they're creditors, and they stand in the line of creditors. And a transfer like this can be presumed to be fraudulent, to defraud those creditors. That's the kind of cynical behavior that he and his wife are engaging in, and it shouldn't be missed.
What was the date on that transfer again?
Is it September?
So it's a couple of months after his arrest.
22nd.
So after his arrest and after his wife said she's filing divorce, he then just transfers the property anyway?
To her, yeah. He gets arrested July 13th. Okay, so we're looking at July to August to September. Over 2 months later, a little over 2 months later, after the divorce started 6 days after he was arrested, and all of a sudden now the property, poop, there it is. It's been transferred. They're clearly in communication with one another, perhaps through their lawyers, but for that to happen. But it's a cynical transfer to defeat the rights of the creditors. And
there's no rules against that?
Saying, oh, I didn't do anything. I don't know what's going on. Pretty hard to not know what's going on.
There's no rule against that. Like if you're in the midst of a possible someone's gonna family members can sue you for something, and there's nothing that you can do about that.
There is creditors, for example, can step in, make a motion to the bring a proceeding, and then make a motion to the court to set aside the transfer as fraudulent. That can happen. I don't know if it will, because I don't know who the creditors are, but or could be. But that's been done before. I've done it myself. I've actually set aside exactly the same kind of a transfer in another case a long time ago. So it can be done.
But it just throws a whole wrinkle into this whole thing with ASA and everybody else that goes on involved in that too.
Yeah. No question about it.
Yeah, no, I mean, last time we spoke about, ASA and the lawyer and the whole thing that was going on there. But to say it's kind of add another distasteful move here.
One amongst many.
One amongst many, yeah. I mean, for real. What is it something that you'd likely get out of, let's say, Maureen Brainerd Barnes seems to be the next one that's possibly up on the docket. Let's just say that for some. Are you comfortable with the district attorney running the investigation himself? I mean, excuse me, the court case himself, the trial?
Oh, that's another, wow. I've known Ray Tierney. He's a guy of great integrity, and he's also a careful guy that works steadily. He's a steady, kind of He likes to step by step go through his work. I know that personally because, I knew him when he was a young DA, but in Suffolk, but also when he was a United States attorney. I cooperated with him to give him the evidence necessary to convict a corrupt Long Island lawyer named Vincent J. Trimarco Jr., who stole $1.2 million from my client from a little girl. And Ray pursued that in a very careful, studious manner, and it resulted in this guy going to jail. So I know him that way, and that's the way he'll probably be when it comes to the trial. He'll do the same. He'll use the same process, and he's got plenty of helpers in his office.
Yeah, we don't want to get you in bed way with him, so we'll drop that line of questioning.
Thank you.
But,
okay.
Yeah, we'll drop that line of questioning. But yeah, I mean, I always, I think I was a little shocked myself that he was going to take this on, but that's for another story. We don't want to go down that road.
Yeah.
The issue that really comes down to is, where do you see, what's your best guess? If everything seems status quo with the next police commissioner, what do you think are some of the next steps that happen in this investigation? Or you'd like to see? Let's put it that way. Let's put it as an opinion kind of question. What would you like to see?
Well, I'd like to see that the detectives broaden their scope of investigation and they go out, knock on doors, and talk to people. I think that's occurring. I'm hoping it will broaden and continue. That much needs to be done. I also know that Rex Hoyman had a proclivity for carrying a handgun and using his handgun very recklessly around people. So the idea that he had just one modus operandi because of the way the four were killed just doesn't fly. This guy used guns. He had guns, as we all know, and he used them. And there's plenty of evidence of that, which I've garnered. So that's in it. Now we have this young Asian male who gets killed in a different way and gets his head bashed in. But when you understand the fury and the sense of malice and evil that he projected upon people who knew him, who've come to me, you get the idea then that he's capable of smashing in a guy's face, no problem. He's capable. In fact, it seems almost like it's he delights in, he takes a taste in different kinds of forms of murder. So the chances that he's connected to the others and their murders, the dismemberment of poor little Jessica Taylor, for example, are really strong. And the chances that he hunted them, that he stalked them, are strong.
That's interesting. Like I said, I've been a one killer person right from the very beginning of this case. I did waver a little bit, but I stuck with my guns and said, one person, just because whose MO has changed for a variety of reasons, including technology.
Well, it looks like it took more than one person to do some of the stalking that he did. And I think that's a big part of this that needs to be further pursued.
In regards to certain number of the victims, or just in regards to, Gilgo 4 in particular?
No, in regards to more than the four.
More than the four.
Yeah.
So like what you're saying is like a cabal of men that were involved?
I don't know if it's a cabal of men, but it's more than one person, that's for sure, to my mind. And, there are certainly, he operated amongst groups. Now, how did he operate? Was it just to enjoy the perverse sexuality that he was involved in, or did it go further than that? I don't know yet. But I think what's implied is that it did.
That's I mean, I guess that's where the whole investigation has got to land in regards to that. So we're getting a lot of people are asking in the chat, how they can go about helping you with the symposium, whether it's, I guess, could be monetarily, it could be, volunteering kind of thing. Is there something going to be on your website or
Yeah,
something?
here's what I've done. I did it long before we came up with the idea of the symposium. I created a not-for-profit corporation because of my work with so many people who were crushed by, I always say, buried alive by the system, by our society. And sometimes, including their own bad acts, but nonetheless are victims of themselves and of the great weight of society upon them. Some people like so many of these sex workers like Jessica, who never stood a chance. Their lives just didn't allow, they never got the chance to grow up. Like so many of these sex worker girls that we're talking about, they skipped over growing up because they didn't do that. It was done to them by others. And now the consequences are horrible for them. But saying that, I therefore went and formed a not-for-profit corporation called Magdalene Dismas Society, Inc. And that is I run it, but we have a very modest amount of money that's in there right now in that account. But when I named it after Mary Magdalene, who was, the great saint of the church, that she was given, Christ saw fit to give her the privilege of being the first at his tomb on Easter Sunday. And she had been a wild girl and by tradition, a sex worker. And Dismas was the good thief on the cross, who spoke well of Christ when he was there. And even though he was a thief and therefore very likely a murderer, Christ promised him to be the first person in heaven. So I thought those kind of people, they represent the kind of people I'm trying to help. So I created that society, and it would be there that the money would go. It wouldn't go to me. If there's any money to be sent, it would be sent. You could send it to me at my address, but it's made, any checks or so on are made out to Magdalene Dismas, and hopefully we can use that to pay some of the enormous costs that I've laid out. And just so you know, I've used the Magdalene Dismas Society. That has represented other victims. For example, Sarah Gilbert, when I just did her murder case, and then I had to do I didn't have to, but I did the appeal. I did it through Magdalene Dismas. So there it is. If you want to know how to help, that's how you can help, is just anything you could give. It's costing me a fortune. It's breaking me financially in my small world.
Is there a web address that you can give us, or you want to give it to me, send it to me, and I can put it in the show notes and we can put it out?
I don't have a web address for it yet.
Okay.
I haven't. It's not been used much. Like I said, I put money in it, and there's one or two people like the libraries that sponsored my discussions. We asked them to put the check to Magdalene Dismas, but that's as far as it's gone. So I'll get it to you. We'll put together one, and then that will be the way to do it. But I'm not very good at those kinds of things. I need to get my staff to do it.
Okay, well, like I said, and there are people around that can help you out for that, for sure, especially virtual stuff where they can do things on the internet. So we put up your web address again for your law firm,
Okay.
johnraylaw.net, and you said you write a check to Magdalene Dismas Society, right? Society?
Magdalene Dismas Society, Inc.
Society, Inc. And you can mail the check over to John's office there in Miller Place, and he'll make sure that the money gets to where it's got to go. So that's great news in that respect, because there's a lot of people are asking in the chat here how they can go about helping out.
That's great to hear. It's wonderful to hear. I really appreciate it. My heart.
Yep. Well, I mean, you give us your valuable time to talk to us about this stuff and share new things that nobody else is sharing out there in the news media. So everybody here is kind of excited about that maybe we can help out in return for your time that you provided for us for that.
Thanks, Joe. And thank you all those folks that are on here and helping out. I mean that.
Yeah.
Thank each one of you, but
well, you just did, right? So yeah, you can thank you, but we will talk offline, and I will see what we can get together and that kind of situation, and let's see what we can do.
All right.
Well, John, listen, thank you again for your time tonight. We learned a lot of new stuff on here, and we also found a way that maybe we can help out with the symposium that you're going to be. What was the date again for the symposium?
It's December 8th. Right now, it's scheduled from 2 to 5. It's a 3-hour deal. We're making it very academic. It's not going to be a flash for the press. They can be there, but it's going to be a very detailed laying out of what I say is the case to be made, not only for Shannan, but for Jessica and all the other evidence we've gathered regarding Hoyerman.
Very good. So you heard it right there. Make sure that we go down. If you got those information about the symposium, you want to be there, we'll figure all that. I'll put out some information. I'll to talk to John offline, and we can maybe get that information out there so
Sure.
that everybody who wants to join in can. And hopefully we can get a lot of media attention on this too. So
Yeah.
John, thank you again for joining us. Everybody, thanks for watching. You guys have a great night. Stay safe. We'll talk soon.
All right.